Beyonce has been at the top for decades. Same presence, same precision, same control. While the rest of the industry ages in public, her image doesn't seem to move at all. No visible wear, no long decline, no phase where time catches up. Most people explain that away quickly. Talent, discipline, money, good teams. Those answers sound fine, so nobody pushes further. But inside the industry, timelines matter. And when one career stops following the same rules as everyone else, it gets noticed. When an icon stops following human rules, it starts quietly, the way most unsettling realizations do. No headlines, no scandal, just time passing. Albums release, tours happen, interviews roll by, years stack on top of each other. For most stars, that passage leaves marks. Voices roughen, schedules shorten, movements slow, faces soften or tighten, careers bend, pause, restart. Everyone follows some version of that curve. The producer explains that this is the part people misunderstand. Nobody inside the industry sits around hunting for secrets. Pattern recognition happens by accident. You work long enough, you manage enough artists, and your brain starts comparing timelines without asking permission. You remember how someone looked 10 years ago because you were in the room. You remember the strain in their voice during late rehearsals. You remember the exhaustion after tour legs that never made it to social media. Then there's one career where those markers never arrive. Same performance sharpness, same physical control, same vocal stability, same precision in public appearances. No long gaps blamed on burnout. No visible decline blamed on age. No awkward reinvention phase. Even the mistakes feel calculated, temporary, quickly smoothed over. The producer says it wasn't impressive at first. It felt admirable, professional, disciplined. That's where denial lives. He tells himself the same things everyone else does. Genetics matter. Money solves problems. Access changes outcomes. Training works. Good teams protect their artists. He repeats those explanations until they become automatic. He needs them to be true because the alternative creates friction he doesn't want to deal with. Comfort depends on believing that success follows understandable rules. What changes everything is duration. One good era can be managed, 2 can be luck, 3 can be money. But when decades pass and the same physical and public baseline remains intact, the explanations start to thin out. The absence of decline becomes louder than decline ever would have been. No one moment triggers alarm. It's the accumulation that does it. The producer admits that the unease doesn't feel dramatic. It feels embarrassing. He feels silly for even noticing. He laughs it off in meetings. He avoids saying it out loud because it sounds wrong the moment it leaves his mouth. So he keeps it internal. He lets the discomfort sit without language. That's when the questions start changing shape. It's no longer about youth. It's about rules. Why does this one career seem exempt from limits everyone else eventually hits? Why does the margin for error feel non-existent? Why does time feel edited around this image? None of these questions accuse anyone of anything. They just sit there, unresolved, irritating. The producer says this is where most people stop. They feel the discomfort, then bury it. Not because they're stupid, but because curiosity has consequences. Once you start tracking patterns, you can't stop seeing them. And once you see them, your relationship with the image changes. The industry doesn't create stars, it maintains myths. The producer shifts away from the artist and toward the system. This is the part outsiders rarely see because it isn't glamorous. it's procedural. Modern celebrity isn't held together by talent alone. Talent opens the door. What keeps it open is infrastructure. He explains that every major star exists inside a controlled environment. Appearances are scheduled with recovery windows built in. Interviews are filtered through narrative goals. Public access is rationed. Spontaneity is treated like risk. Aging isn't a moral problem inside the industry. It's a logistical one. Anything unpredictable threatens the story. Teams exist to manage perception across time, not just daily image, but long-term consistency. What angles are allowed? What lighting becomes standard? Which footage is approved? Which moments never surface? The public thinks of branding as logos and colors. Inside, branding is about eliminating variance. The producer admits his own role in this. He signed off on edits. He delayed releases. He helped shape explanations that sounded natural enough to stop follow-up questions. No one framed it as deception. It was always presented as protection. Protect the artist. Protect the brand. Protect the audience from disappointment. Silence doesn't require threats when incentives work. Better, access becomes currency. Speak in line with the narrative and doors stay open. Question the narrative and invitations dry up. Nobody sends warnings. Nobody explains. The system simply stops responding. That quiet withdrawal teaches faster than punishment ever could. This section breaks down how time itself is managed. Certain years get emphasized. Others blur together. Gaps get reframed as creative retreats. Repetition gets labeled consistency. Change gets delayed until it can be controlled. The public sees continuity. Behind the scenes, it's constant adjustment. The producer says the unsettling part isn't that this exists. Every major brand does some version of it. The unsettling part is how far it goes when perfection becomes non-negotiable. Human traits start getting treated as liabilities. Fatigue, aging, emotional volatility. Anything that reminds people there's a person underneath gets minimized. He realizes slowly that he stopped asking whether this was healthy. The machine doesn't care about health. It cares about output. And as long as output remains flawless, questions get labeled unnecessary. This is where complicity sets in. He wasn't dragged into this. He participated willingly because it felt normal, because everyone else did, because success rewarded compliance. That's what makes the guilt linger. He can't point to a villain. He can only point to a structure that works exactly as designed. Why people who notice are removed, not debated. This section focuses on consequences, but not the dramatic kind. No lawsuits, no confrontations, no public scandals. The producer explains that the industry avoids noise. Noise draws attention. Quiet solutions work better. He recalls colleagues who asked harmless questions, not accusations, observations, comments made in meetings that landed wrong, jokes that weren't laughed at, curiosity framed as concern. Nothing happened immediately. That's the important part. Weeks pass, then months. Suddenly, they're not included in certain projects. Emails stop getting answered. Calls go to voicemail. Their names stop appearing on short lists. No one tells them why. No one has to. The message arrives anyway. You've become inconvenient. Journalists get reassigned. Executives find themselves sidelined. Creatives develop reputations for being difficult. The language stays vague on purpose. Instability, negative energy, and not a team fit. These labels don't accuse anyone of lying. They just make them unemployable. The producer says this is how silence spreads. not through fear alone, but through observation. People watch what happens to others and adjust their behavior accordingly. Survival instincts kick in. You stop noticing patterns out loud. You stop connecting dots publicly. You learn where the invisible boundaries sit. Fear doesn't arrive as panic. It arrives as self-editing. He admits the scariest realization was how easily he adapted. He didn't protest. He didn't challenge the system. He stepped back. He told himself it wasn't his place. He focused on his own work. That's how normalization happens. One small retreat at a time. The producer describes the internal conflict that grows from this. Knowing something feels off, but understanding that saying it aloud carries real cost, not just professionally, but socially. Relationships change. Trust erodes. You start questioning who's listening. That's when paranoia creeps in. Not dramatic paranoia, the quiet kind. Watching what you say, watching who's around, wondering how much others know, wondering how much they suspect you know. When perfection stops feeling human, there's a point where admiration quietly changes shape. The producer says it doesn't happen all at once. It happens when precision keeps tightening while warmth slowly drains out. At first, perfection feels impressive. Clean performances, controlled interviews, no missteps. Fans celebrate that level of discipline because it looks like mastery. But mastery eventually crosses a line where it stops feeling earned and starts feeling engineered. This is where the meaning of not human shifts. It isn't about biology. It isn't about science fiction. It's about exemption from limits. Humans age. Humans get tired. Humans have bad weeks and awkward phases. When an image operates without any of that friction, it stops behaving like a person and starts behaving like a product that can't show wear. The producer explains the exact moment this clicked for him. He was watching a rehearsal playback, not a show, not a highlight reel. Something meant for internal review. The performance was flawless. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that it looked identical to footage from years earlier. Same movement sharpness, same energy level, same facial control, no micro hesitation, no looseness, no evidence of time lived in between. That's when admiration gave way to distance. Fans say they want icons to be aspirational, but aspiration still needs a pulse. It needs moments where the person underneath shows through. Those moments used to exist early on. Small imperfections, raw edges, a sense of effort. Over time, those disappeared completely. What replaced them was consistency so tight it became eerie. The producer talks about how fans slowly adjust without realizing it. They stop expecting relatability and start consuming spectacle. The icon becomes less someone you connect with and more something you observe. The relationship shifts from shared emotion to awe mixed with discomfort. People don't articulate it, but they feel it. Precision keeps increasing. Polishing keeps intensifying. Every appearance feels engineered down to the millimeter. The image stops absorbing life and starts resisting it. That resistance is what breaks the illusion of humanity. Humans absorb damage. This image deflects it. The producer admits this was the hardest realization to sit with. Not because it was shocking, but because it explained something he'd been feeling for years without language. The reason the image felt distant wasn't fame. It was sterilization. Everything unpredictable had been scrubbed away. The price of knowing and the cost of speaking knowing doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives with isolation. The producer says the moment he fully understood the system, He also understood his position inside it. He wasn't an outsider. He wasn't a rebel. He was someone who benefited. That made speaking complicated. At first, the weight showed up at night. Sleeplessness, replaying conversations, wondering which comments were safe and which weren't. He started editing himself mid-sentence without noticing. He'd feel a thought forming and cut it off before it reached his mouth. Not because anyone told him to, but because his body learned the boundaries. Paranoia didn't feel dramatic, it felt practical. Who's in the room? Who's listening? Who repeats things? Who stays quiet when certain names come up? He started tracking reactions the way others track analytics. Silence became data. The producer explains that people imagine whistleblowers reaching a breaking point and exploding. That's not how it works here. There's no explosion. There's erosion. You lose invitations. You stop getting calls. Your calendar thins out slowly enough that you can tell yourself it's temporary. Speaking wouldn't expose anything. That's the part he had to accept. The system is too large to collapse from one voice. Speaking would only label him as unstable, resentful, difficult. Once that label sticks, it follows you everywhere. Doors don't slam, they simply stop opening. He watched it happen to others and learned the lesson. A colleague raises concerns in a meeting. Nothing happens that day. Months later, that colleague is quietly out of the loop. Another starts asking questions about narrative control. Their contract doesn't get renewed. No drama, no confrontation, just disappearance. That's why silence is so effective. It feels voluntary. It feels like a choice. But it's a choice made inside a shrinking room. The producer says the hardest part wasn't fear of retaliation, it was fear of irrelevance. The industry teaches you early that visibility equals existence. Lose that, and you lose everything you built. Trust eroded slowly. He stopped confiding in people he'd known for years. He stopped assuming shared discomfort meant shared understanding. Too many times, silence was returned with polite nods and nothing else. Everyone was protecting their position. This section avoids catharsis because there isn't any. Knowing becomes a burden you carry quietly. Speaking becomes a risk you measure daily. And the system keeps functioning because most people decide that staying quiet hurts less than being erased. Why this story is really about us. The producer turns the lens outward here because the system doesn't exist in isolation. It exists because it's rewarded. Fans demand longevity without decay. Brands demand reliability without risk. Media demands spectacle without discomfort. Everyone wants the benefits of perfection without confronting what it costs. Aging becomes unacceptable long before it becomes visible, especially for women. Wrinkles get framed as failure. Slowing down gets framed as weakness. Humanity gets treated like a flaw that needs correction. The industry responds to that pressure with systems that erase time wherever possible. The producer admits something uncomfortable. The audience participates too. Every time perfection is rewarded, it gets reinforced. Every time vulnerability is mocked, it gets buried deeper. The system doesn't force expectations onto fans. It reflects them back. This is why the story never resolves cleanly. There's no reveal that fixes everything. No proof that settles the question. The discomfort lingers because it points at a larger issue. When people are turned into symbols, they stop being allowed to behave like people. The question at the center isn't whether an icon is human. It's whether we still want them to be. If we build gods out of individuals, We shouldn't be surprised when they stop showing human traits. And if someone finally says something feels wrong, the rush to silence them says more about the system than the speaker. The producer leaves the audience with that discomfort on purpose. Not to accuse, to reflect. Perfection looks clean on the surface. Underneath, it requires control, silence, and erasure. The price doesn't get paid by one person alone. It gets distributed across everyone who looks away. There's no closing answer, just a lingering unease that sticks because it can't be easily dismissed. Time still moves. Humans still age. When an image doesn't, the question isn't how. It's why we expect it not to.